Welcome back to Brashonomics. We're happy to have a good friend of our show, Glen Thiessen here, wealth advisor with Transition Planning Inc. And first of all, I mean, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you since New Year's, and I know you've been helping families plan ahead for the major transition in life with the advice and securities offered through KMS Financial Services.
That's right. It's a whole year later.
It's a whole year later.
Isn't that amazing? And we're almost halfway through January already. It's moving fast.
It is moving fast.
Yeah.
I have another kid coming in like 2 months, man.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a transitional life period.
Yeah, wait until the grandkids come along. I spent the last 3 days with my granddaughters, 3 of them. Oh, my goodness. It was so fun playing Barbies with them. I tell you what.
I bet it was exhausting.
It was awesome.
Nice. Are they still around?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Say hi. What are their names?
Joy,
Yeah.
Ariana, and Felicity.
No, they're famous.
Yeah.
So Glenn, let's here we are in the new year, and everybody's kind of come out of their holiday time. The time has been spent with family, and now, at least for us yesterday, everybody starts coming out of the woodworks with all the stuff they need to get done.
Yes.
We had all the people come back. Oh yeah, I was going to refinance last year, and kind of the year started yesterday, I guess.
Yeah. And what's interesting is in your monologue in the beginning, the introduction, you talked about things about what the future might hold, and nobody knows where we're going and so forth. But there are some predictable things, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. Is a little bit. One of the things that is predictable is interest. So let's talk about interest. When you're dealing with interest, we're talking about a borrower and lender relationship. So you might be both a borrower and a lender. So, for example, as a borrower, you're going to pay interest, like on a credit card, car loan, home loan, line of credit. So you're a borrower when you pay the interest. As a lender, you're receiving interest. So give me some examples of receiving interest.
And this is interesting. Like the receiving interest is probably everybody does it, but they don't consider it in that manner.
Right. You don't think of yourself as a lender. But you are a lender as you're receiving interest on your savings accounts, CDs, savings bonds, corporate bonds, fixed annuities. You're a lender lending those entities money so that you can get interest back.
And in those savings accounts, man, oh man, I mean, that is some serious savings, huh? I want to jack my interest rate up on the savings I'm lending the banks.
The interesting thing about that is you can do that, but that involves more risk. So, for example, let's talk about interest rate represents risk. So, for example, the higher the risk you're willing to take, the higher the interest rate you're going to get, right? So let's talk about that. For example, government bonds pay very low interest because they have taxing authority. They're not going to default, and you're basically going to get your money plus interest. So the rates on government bonds are pretty low compared to like a corporate bond that doesn't have taxing authority. They have to remain profitable in order to pay the interest on their bonds and their loans, which is basically what a bond is. It's a loan. Right? So the corporate bond rates are going to be a little higher than the government bonds. Well, let's talk about the risk factors, for example. Like one of the risk factors is the length of a loan, right? So the shorter the term, like on a savings account, for example, or a CD, the shorter the term, the lower the interest rate. The longer the term, the higher the rate. So, for example, on a 15-year mortgage, you're going to pay a lower interest rate than on a 30-year mortgage. Why would that be?
Well, banks can get their money back faster.
That, and there's a risk of extending that payment period over 30 years. And what happens if a person loses their job? I mean, a lot can happen in 30 years versus 15 years, right? So the longer the term, the higher the interest rate, right? So let's talk about credit rating because that impacts the risk level, right? So, for example, with a person, individual, we're talking about your credit score, right? So what impacts your credit score?
I mean, the thing with credit, they're so vast, but you have to make your payments on time.
Yes.
You need to make sure that you have your credit to debt ratios are low. But
Exactly.
Most of it is, and you actually have to use your credit.
Yes.
That's the thing that a lot of people forget. Oh, I don't have credit cards. Well, that means you don't have any credit.
Well, that's true. And wouldn't it be great to not need credit? That'd be awesome.
It's a whole nother topic, isn't it, Glenn?
Yes, indeed. You want to become financially independent someday. So let's try that. But, certainly payment history makes a difference. Like if you're missing a payment or you're late, that's going to impact your credit score, which means that you're going to have to pay a higher interest rate on whenever you borrow money. Your payment ability is, like sources of income and the amounts of those sources, that makes a difference. So
Yeah, and of course the other thing is the reserves. I mean, how much money do you have saved, or I guess are you loaning to the banks?
Right. Assets
Assets.
backing you up.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about compounding, because there are some factors that impact interest rates in terms of compounding. So, for example, there's a compounding effect that has a larger impact with a larger loan. For example, 1% on a $10,000 loan is only $100 for the whole year. But on a $100,000 loan, that 1% is $1,000 over the same period of time. So, for example, on $1 trillion, it's $10 billion. 1% is $1 trillion is $10 billion. So it's, the bigger the number, the faster it compounds.
So then you look at our debt of like 14 trillion at way more than 1%, and it's a really big number.
Gets kind of scary. Also, higher rate makes an impact. So, for example, if you double the 1% to 2% on that $100,000 loan, for example, you're not now making $1,000, it's $2,000. But really, when you think about it, most people look at that as a 1% difference. It's a 100% difference. From $1,000 up to $2,000, that's a 100% increase on interest with just a 1% interest rate change.
Mm-hmm.
So
we see the same thing in mortgages.
Yeah.
When people are like, well, I'm at 5. I know I could get to 3. It's really only 2%. Well,
No.
you're cutting 40% of the interest off your loan.
Right.
And some people don't grasp that, even 1/4% or 0.5% can make a huge difference over a long period of time.
Yeah. And that's why we're talking about these issues, because you don't think about these issues every day. And so we want to bring them to the forefront.
We do, Glenn.
We do.
We think about them every day.
We want to help our audience to think about that, though.
Glen Thiessen joins us, wealth advisor with Transition Planning Inc. Glenn, we have a couple minutes left before we have to go to break.
Okay. Well, let me just give you a little quiz. Let's talk about the widget company. Okay. Let's just ask you about this widget company. We've got income of $24,000. We have expenses of $35,000. We have existing debt of $1,221,000. We have a credit line of $164,000. And so this company figures they're in trouble. So they're going to work on the budget. They're going to cut $1,000 out of the budget. Let me ask you, would this company have a high or low credit rating?
I don't know what their credit rating would be, but assuming that if they're making their payments on their line of credit and they're paying all their existing debt, their credit could be okay, I suppose.
Sure. Out of a $24,000 annual income, that might be possible. Would you lend to this company if you were a lender?
No, these guys are going broke.
Okay. So, but if you did, let's say that you did, would you charge them a low interest rate or a high interest rate?
I would charge these guys a high interest rate.
Yeah, because it's really high risk here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So basically, if you add 8 zeros behind those numbers, that's exactly what our government is doing to us.
Right.
Okay. So just think about compounding of interest and so forth, and what the interest rate change might be, because we're at low interest rates right now. If they do go up, that will make it more difficult to make those payments.
So this is our post fiscal cliff budget,
Right?
Minus $1 billion,
Right.
or divided by $1 billion.
Yes. So can be scary, but let me just get into the tax minute, because we did just pass a little tax act there at the end of, just a few days ago. So in the estate tax provisions, the applicable exclusion amount remains at $5,120,000 per taxpayer, with the top tax rate now increased from 35% to 40%. But that's when you leave stuff behind. Let's talk about payroll tax increase. The 2% reduction in the Social Security tax ended, and so now we're back to the 6.2%. So you probably have noticed in your payroll tax that it's you got a little bit less take home now because your Social Security tax break went away. Now, in terms of the federal tax rates, basically the 10% rate is extended permanently as the lowest tax bracket. The other tax brackets of 25%, 28%, 33%, and 35% remain intact until your income exceeds $400,000 as an individual, or $450,000 filing joint. Then your tax rate can go as high as 39%, or will go to 39.6%. And in terms of the personal exemptions, they're phased out, and the itemized deductions are limited for individuals filing with over $250,000 income, those filing head of household with income over $275,000, and filing joint with taxable income over $300,000.
And these are things now that people need to talk to somebody like you as their financial planner, talk to their accountant, and understand what these numbers mean for themselves.
Right.
Because it's no fun getting slapped in the face with them, over the course of the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months.
Right.
You really do need to understand what options you have to try to hold on to some of that money.
That's right. And one of the things that people have run to for safety and higher income are bonds. And the problem with bonds is that as interest rates go up, bond values go down. So if you're in a lot of bonds in your portfolio, you're going to be hurting when interest rates do rise. They're at low levels right now, probably not going to go much lower. But as they go up, your bond values go down. So be careful about that.
Glenn, thanks so much for joining us. Again, Glen Thiessen with Transition Planning, Inc. Always a pleasure to see you.
Same here.
All right. When we come back, we'll continue a little bit of the tax conversation. So stay tuned.